In this video, I want to cover the distinction between all and all selected and how you can get different results. I have two basic data sets, one with 2 separate years and 2 separate salespersons, and the other table has multiple salespersons. I want to start by adding a filter on person, which I'll use to show the different results. And I want to add that I should also be able to select all, because that will be relevant in a moment. So far my table is the same as my data set. My actual calculation will simply be summing the column and either using all or all selected. Then calculate sum my values column, where I want to apply a filter, all in this case, on the person column. And all returns all rows in table, ignoring any filters that have been applied to the table if I only provide that as an argument. In this case, I say only ignore any filter applied on person. And if we add that, we can see it's going to give me the sum for year because it ignores the filter applied on person. I mean, if I sort by year, we can see 2023 plus 2023 gives 15 because all says to ignore the filter that exists inside of the visual, which is applied on the person column. Meaning if I remove the field, I would see that my calculations give the same value. And that's expected because I could also remove the person name here and it would simply ignore any filter applied, meaning both year and person. I can then do the same calculation, this time using all selected. The distinction here is it returns all the rows, ignoring any filters applied inside the query, keeping filters from outside. And the way I think of it is that all ignores all filters, both internally and externally, while all selected removes filters internally, but not externally. And to use the formal language, that means it respects the shadow filter context, which is the filters that apply outside. And then I needed to change the name. And right now I don't have any shadow filters applied because I haven't selected anything in my filter, which means I get the same values. But when I then add a filter on ASA, we're going to see that my visual now updates because I've removed those two values. And we can see the distinction between all and all selected. Because even though my visual doesn't show Denji anymore, my all value ignores the filter. Because my actual filter here is on person and my calculation says to ignore any filter, no matter if it comes internally or externally. Meanwhile, all selected says that, well, it should respect the filter that comes outside. So because I select something here, I get a different value. So that is the simple distinction. If I then add a separate filter on year this time, I'm not specifying year inside of my actual calculation, meaning both of my calculations will respect that filter. Meaning nothing actually happens here. This is the way I want it to happen. The distinction between all and all selected becomes relevant when you want to do percentage calculations, which I'll do on the next sheet, where I'll use the second table because I have multiple salespeople. Then we can add the salesperson as a filter. And again, I also want to be able to select everyone. I can then do the same calculation as before, but I now want to do a division to get the percentage. We can say I want to divide the sum of my table, this time table 2 value, where I want to calculate, because I need to change the filter context. I want the sum of table 2's value column, where I want to ignore any filter applied upon the table 2 person column. And then I need a closing parentheses, and we can add that. And I then need to add, my table kind of bugged out, and it actually does work properly. If I change this to sum, I now see that the all column updates. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it does work properly, yeah. And I actually wanted that to be percentage. And then it's the exact same calculation for all selected, except I use all selected instead. And because there's currently no filter externally, these two measures will give the same. But once I add a filter to the person column, we can see that I now get different results. The all percentage calculation ignores any filter, both internally and externally. Meaning internally it still sums the whole column as if the rows were present, while for all selected it says when you do this calculation you should actually respect the filters that come outside. And that's how you end up with the different results. You want to do the all calculation when you want to respect the actual total value even though you add filters. Meaning if you want to see only a few salespeople but you still want to see, well, how much of the total sales did this salesperson account for, then you'd use all percent. But if you want to say, I only want to see a subset of my data set and I want to compare these salespeople to one another, then you'd need to use all selected. This would be the same as adding a filter inside of your actual table, but you still have access to all the data. Meaning the two functions complement one another because they solve separate problems. It's not that one is correct and the other is wrong. It's simply two different questions. So